Yeah, you have to stay. Keep this tradition. I know. When you're not in a hurry,
What is this for?
we've been in that scene for so long.
Public comment. Public comment.
You'll be happy. So you didn't get to call people on the list yet? What, are you kidding? I have a job to do. I know.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we could please call to order the regular City Commission meeting for Tuesday, April 17th, 2018. Can we please have roll call?
Commissioner Drosky.
Here?
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Parnez.
Here.
Vice Mayor Battle.
Here.
Mayor Gantz.
Here. Could everyone please stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we please have approval of the City Commission meeting minutes from, let's see the date, March 20th, 2018?
Motion to acknowledge those minutes.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Acknowledgement of our city board minutes for our code compliance special magistrate meeting for February 13th, 2018. Our community appearance board meeting minutes for February 28th, 2018.
Motion to acknowledge those minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we have approval of our city commission meeting agenda for April 17th, 2018.
Any additions?
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay. Well, next we have up our awards and recognition. And one of our awards that we have right here is for our Parks and Recreation staff. Parks and Recreation staff finished third place in the 2018 FRPA Turf Rodeo. It was held on March 23rd. So we would like to honor and congratulate all of them. The actual ground, this rodeo that it had, our maintenance staff and from other municipalities participated in Southeast Florida, put their skills and were challenged to participate in this skills that included blower slalom, bobcat backhoe, bobcat basketball, field lining, irrigation valve assembly, and more. This year, 12 municipalities competed as teams with over 150 participants. We're proud to recognize the following staff for their individual medals. Mr. Larry Jordan finished second place in the home run contest. As I call your name, just stand up front here. We'll have everybody gather. We have Mike Purcell finished third place in the bobcat backhoe. Aaron Fulmore finished first place in the bobcat backhoe. Sherman Gamage finished third place in basketball. And Sherman here? No. And Aaron Fillmore and Archie Gunner Jr., second place in cornhole. Great job and congratulations to our staff. We have all of our certificates right here. We'll bring
Will they compete against other cities?
Next up, we have our U9 Florida Crushers. Are they here? Yes. All right. This recognition is for, let me get my information here. This certificate of recognition is for becoming the 2018 U.S. Youth Futsal National Champions. Knowing and understanding the challenges of futsal, your hard work and dedication are hereby recognized and applauded. The U9 Florida Crushers were the underdogs of the 2018 National Youth Futsal Tournament. As futsal is not a very supported, not practiced sport in Florida, and played against the most prominent futsal clubs in the nation, clashing in the finals against the biggest and most feared of all, ABK, known as the Ankle Breakers out of Grand Rapids, Michigan. How old are you? Ankle Breakers? Wow. Against all odds, the Florida Crushers were an unknown team that didn't get much respect from the other teams involved. After losing their first game to the ABK 4-1, they dominated their other games with a 9-0, 8-5, and 6-4 wins against top clubs from the nation to reach the finals. They won the finals 6-3 to become the national champions for their age group with an incredible group of talented young players. Please join us in recognizing the coach, the players, and their athletic accomplishments, and welcome the 2018 U.S. Youth Futsal National Champions, the U9 Florida Crushers. As the commissioners gather over here to the edge with them, I'm going to call each one of them by name. We have Coach Rule Costello-Branco, Mateo DePaulo, Crosby Franca, Fletcher Gleason, Luca Cijas, Tomas Calazos, Lucas Araujo, Cooper Bayless Gaba, Juan Olivares, Arturo de Almadea. Congratulations. We'll let you speak in a moment. Coach, would you like to say a few words?
Sit here, sit here. Sit here. I'd like to take the city of Deerfield Beach recognize our efforts, our title. It's a pleasure to be here. We actually are based in Deerfield Beach. We run at the DS Sportsplex on Southwest 10th Street, award-winning, world-class organization that's organized all over the world. And we are all based here, so it's a pleasure to be here and be with you guys. Okay?
Thank you for making us proud. Commissioner Miller, I believe you want to make the next presentation?
Well, thank you for the honor. Tonight, we're honoring Jim Stevens, who's retiring from the Board of Trustees from the Fireman Pension Fund. But I just want to give a little background why, this is a wonderful thing that he's just been on a current board. But let me back it up a couple of years. Jim and his family were from Connecticut. And in Connecticut, Jim was a crew chief for the Hose Ambulance Corps. Jim also provided EMT training and certification to thousands of local men and women in Connecticut. He moved down here in the 80s. Jim is a certified EMT instructor for 20 years. He moved down to Deerfield Beach in 1982. He was nominated to be on the Firemen's Pension Board by former Commissioner/Mayor Nolan in 1993. He's been part of the CERT program in the 90s. In the 2000s, he was a POPS board member. In 2015, he was on the Fireman Pension Board. For Jim, for a life well served, come on up. Let me read this for you. If I may read this to you, and this is for the mayor. Why don't you read the proclamation? Thank you, Jim.
Jim Stevens is hereby honored for your service and contributions to the Board of Trustees Fireman's Pension Trust Fund since September of 2013. You've aptly served the board and city commission at a moment's notice when stepping in to fulfill several vacancies which demonstrated your unselfish commitment. We, the city commission and staff, thank you for serving as a dedicated, longtime board member and city resident, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Thank you so much.
Shake your hand. Thanks, Jim. Mayor's coming down.
Thank you for your service, sir. Okay.
Did you want to have a word, Jim? Not really. I don't blame you. Have a good night. Is that your wife with you, Jim?
Yes, it is.
Let's give her a hand.
She's fine.
We need to beautify it.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
If anyone, we are taking donations for a new camera for Diane that would go a little faster. If anybody could do that, that'd be great. Also, just a reminder, if we could please silence our cell phones. I'm sure I'll be saying it again at some point during the meeting, but if we could all do that, including the commissioners, it would be appreciated. Mr. City Attorney, our public hearings are first reading? No. Oh, I'm so sorry. We have a presentation by our school board, and we have our school board representative, Ms. Nora Rupert, who is here tonight, about the Deerfield Beach SMART project. Please come on.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. Everybody in every municipality is saying, where's the bond? Where's our money? What's going on with it? So I thought we'd bring our professionals here to show you where we are, when we're expecting to make certain progress, and actually show you a spot on our school board website that you'll be able to follow it school by school as well as by district school board member. So I'm going to yield my time to them and answer any questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rupert. Good evening, Mayor, Madam Vice Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Mike Bobby. I represent CBRE Erie. We are proud and pleased to be owner's representative for the SMART program for the Broward County Public Schools and to serve Ms. Rupert, board, and staff, and so many others in the district as we work together to put together thousands of projects, as you'll see here, across the county. And of course, we'll dig in tonight to the 8 projects or the 8 schools that are most important to everyone here in this room tonight. So let me go ahead and get started. Let me go ahead and get started. There we go. You say you're going to have to press the button? All right. I want to talk a little bit about the program at the highest level because I think it's important to know how we got started, to understand where we are and where we're going to go. So as you can see, this program started in 2014. A bond referendum was passed, and that generated the potential revenue of $800 million over the course of the term of the project to support projects all across Broward County. The reality is, in addition to the $800 million, the board has already set aside over $200 million to support these projects to ensure that the scope of work that was voted on back in November of 2014 is indeed carried through. So I wanted to share that with you. The other thing that I'd like to share in this particular slide is that although it was passed in 2014, I think some of the things that we tend to think about are, it was passed, where's the next building project, and when's it coming out of the ground? Let me share with you that a tremendous amount of work had to be done once it was passed to lay the foundation to be able to move these many projects across the county forward. That's what was being worked on through the course of 2014 and 15. Then what we did was, once we put the foundational pieces together, things like how are we going to deliver projects, things like contracts, different agreements, all the kinds of things that need to be in place and be well done ahead of actually doing the work that we have in front of us. So that all was taking place. And then we went ahead and literally brought years, let me back up, the program's broken into 5 years. So we moved years 1 and 2 together, and 3, and literally, instead of moving 1 year at a time, we brought them together to try to catch up and move forward as fast as we could. And that's what we're trying to do even as we speak today. We've just begun year 4 in the program this year. So you can see that in 2017, which is, we just came out of that, we're moving to 2018. We are in year 4 of the program, and I want to share with you some of the exciting things that have happened already as we stand here today. First of all, if we go to the next slide, thank you. I'll put this down, I don't need that anymore, do I? There are some things that some may go unnoticed, but they're huge in terms of how we've been able to impact with this program what's happening between our students, our teachers, and what's happening in our classrooms. If you take a look at this slide, it talks about things like music instruments. The goal is to make sure that if a child is interested in music, that they have an opportunity to have that instrument available to them. Not every child, based upon the ability of their family, is able to have those kinds of things. And this allows equity across the county to be able to have that opportunity. Things that involve athletic improvements. We have track improvements, weight rooms, which we call fitness centers. Those are all things that are happening across the county. And the one on the bottom I'd like to take a moment to talk about, because those are pretty astounding numbers that you see on that slide. This is about technology. This is about putting technology and environments of technology around and in the hands of our students and staff to make sure that when they leave Broward County Public Schools and when they graduate and they move on, that they are technologically fit and ready to move forward in the kind of world that we are going to be living in from now and forevermore. And you can see what's been happening to ensure that we have appropriate wireless networks across the district, that we have a very low ratio of technology end users to students, and that ensures that technology indeed is available to students across the county. Those things have already been in place. They've happened. They're complete. Let me go to the next slide. Now let's talk about the primary projects, the renovation projects. And by the way, this program is almost all renovation and upfit of existing facilities. There are several new additions, but for the most part, we're talking about things like things that aren't really flamboyant or huge aesthetic improvements, but things like roof replacements, things like air conditioning systems, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems, doors, windows, and a huge part of it has to do with safety. In fact, we call this the SMART program. The S stands for safety, and I'll talk about how that fits in too. But the primary projects that you'll see on this slide work their way through 6 different phases. Each phase is important. You probably heard that the better job you do at the start of this program, the better job you do in planning and the design, the better job the construction is going to, the better the construction is going to go, the higher the quality of the product at the end of the day. So we don't want to take and speed through any one of these phases just to get to the end result. What we want to do is take our time and do it well, do it right, move forward. And what I want to show you on this slide is this. If you look in it's the design phase, and you'll see the number 922. In the last quarter, and this is how we report out to our board, in the last quarter we moved from 352 projects in the design phase to 922 projects. A lot of those projects are now at the point where we're submitting our plans to the building department to receive permit to be able to put a contractor in place and get the work done. Just today, our board approved a GMP type contract for a delivery method called CM at Risk to Blanche Ely, one of the big 3 projects that we have early on in the program. Just approved that today, which means we will soon be mobilizing and seeing Blanche Ely High School see all kinds of work going on that campus. We expect to have the other 2, Northeast High School and Stranahan High School, come with it to the board, in front of the board in the next week or so. But I wanted to show you that because that shows progress, and that tells us that what's going to be happening on the road with construction and what you will see at campuses across the county will be very, very busy. And what we've got to be careful from our end of things as we look at this is not to flood the market such that we don't have enough contractors to do all the work that we're about to put on the street. So we're going to have to think about how we manage that going forward as well. Each quarter now, you will be seeing, as you move forward on those phases, you'll be seeing changes in numbers. The numbers in design will actually start to go down. The numbers in hiring vendor and under construction will continue to rise. And at the end of the day, you'll see that number, which says complete, really start to grow. So those are the 6 phases that we use in every project. That gives you a sense of what's happened in the last quarter. The next slide is simply another way to illustrate what we have been talking about in terms of phases. And you can see that we're over 1,500 projects in total across the county. And the finish line, that range between 2019 and 2020. We have a commitment to be complete by 2021. Now, let's get down to the stuff that's probably most important to everybody here. Let's talk about Deerfield Beach, the city of Deerfield Beach, and the schools, the Broward County Public Schools here in Deerfield Beach. There are 8 schools, and if we go to the next slide, there are 8 schools, 5 elementary, you can see we've got a middle, high school, and an education center. The total amount of money out of the bond program that's attributable to these 8 schools is a little over, well, it's almost $42 million. $42 million spread across these 8 schools. You might say, well, how did, I don't know if think back, how did the projects become assigned? How were they identified? Well, before the bond program was placed on the ballot and approved, there was a needs assessment and deficiency reports made on every school across the county, of which there are over 230. And in each case, those deficiencies were then prioritized and approved by the board as what the scope should be per school. So not every school is the same. Not every amount of money is allocated equally. It's based upon the need and the amount of deficiencies a particular school would have. So one would surmise that the older the school, the greater the need, therefore the funding level based upon the size of the school would probably be more. So $41 million, almost $42 million is allocated to schools here in the city of Deerfield Beach. Let's go to the next slide. Now this tells us where we are with the different projects. And as I said, remember, these projects are building envelope, heating and cooling systems, things that are in the outside of the building. And in some cases, there are improvements such as STEM labs, which are a high school program, very important, technologically driven. We have improvements to media centers, art, music, those kinds of things. In fact, if I remember right, at Deerfield High School in this program, we have a STEM lab improvements for that high school. And I believe there's over $1 million allocated to improve STEM labs and to create new STEM labs in the high school. As you can see in each case, we've given you a quick glimpse of where we are in the work on these different schools. The other thing that I wanted to mention is every school is identified as, remember I mentioned earlier, it's a 5-year program. Every school is in one of those years. If you're in a 5th-year program, you probably aren't going to see, such as Deerfield Middle School, I believe that's a year 5 program, you won't see a lot of work. They're in the planning stage because they were planned to be done in year 5. We do have, Deerfield High School would have had the earliest of all of the work. We have a fairly large heating, ventilation, air conditioning project, which is somewhere around $7 million that is attributable to that school. We're close to 100% design documents getting ready to go to the building department, which means, remember that phase, we'll go ahead from design straight to finding our contractor and putting the contractor to work. We have had a little struggle with Deerfield High School in designs. We're in a catch-up mode and a recovery mode, and so that when we get to construction, we will be able to meet our goal, meet our target as we had set out at the beginning of the project. So that gives you a sense of where we are in each of the schools in Deerfield. And if I can go to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about the S in SMART. S stands for safety. What does the bond program have with respect to safety for our campuses, our students, our parents, and our staff? One of the things that you find throughout the county in over 200 of the 230 campuses are improvements that we call single point of entry. Now, this alone is not a security blanket for a campus. Security comes in layers, everyone, and I'm sure that's been a topic for all of us here, especially recently. And we know that there are layers that need to be created to maximize security on a campus and reduce risk and exposure for those on the campus. Single point of entry is just one part of the layers, and the layers are not just the physical, the hardening of campuses, but how the occupants and others around actually are vigilant with respect to the way the campus is used, who's on the campus, keeping doors closed, checking in people at the office, making sure nobody that is able to just walk into a building. So there's a lot of things that come together to make a campus as safe and as secure as it can possibly be. Single point is one of those things, but it has all of those other layers that have to go with it to make it work at its best. So single point of entry simply says that we are trying to ensure that when you go to a campus, that if I'm a visitor, that I must go in a door, only one door. I must go into an area that is secure, and I must be checked in before I am able to move anywhere else in the building. Sounds like a good thing, right? We don't want anybody just walking into a campus, walking down the halls. And kind of interesting, my wife is a school psychologist up in Palm Beach, right across the county line over here. And she happens to work at several schools. I won't give you the name of the school, but she came home the first month of the school year and said, "You won't believe this campus. People are walking everywhere. Parents can come in at this entrance, this entrance." I said, "Ooh, that's not something that's probably going to meet their security standards." Well, I guarantee you we don't have that. And this is going to ensure that we have that safety and security single point of entry all across the county with the same standard to meet district requirements. So, and you see what we have here, although I've gone off on the big picture, you can see that all 8 schools have some work to be done in single point of entry. One is complete or nearly complete, which happens to be Bright Horizons. 2 are in the actual construction phase, and the rest are being planned as we speak. And then lastly, another piece, which in the overall scheme of things per school, it seems like a small piece, but when you think about 230 schools times $100,000 per school, that adds up to about $23 million, right? So what this is every school, the board and leadership of the district said every school has unique needs. And this was a way to ensure that every school could address some of those unique needs and that they would be able to say what they wanted to do with it. So we have something that's a part of this program called School Choice Enhancement. There are $100,000 allocated for every school. And again, these were done in over a 5-year span. So some school choice enhancements at some of the schools in Deerfield haven't even started yet because year 5 is going to start up next fall. Others have moved along, and we've got one, for instance, that's sitting waiting on a permit to complete a playground project. Once that project's done, they will have completed their school choice enhancement project. So that's just another unique way to support the unique needs of staff and students and schools across the county. Let's go to the next one. So we talked a little about athletics earlier. This is just a slide that talks about weight rooms. You can see that there's a status element there that talks about Q3 of 2018, which is summertime. And then the last one I'd like to talk about is how can you follow us without having somebody like myself come and talk to you and share some things, which we greatly appreciate having the opportunity to do, and we'll come almost anytime you ask us. However, I'd like to give you the opportunity to be able to get online and find out what's going on on your schedule and as you need to know things. So if you go to the school district website and you follow the links that take you to the spotlights, and then you can drill down to the different reports under spotlights. And for every school in the city of Deerfield Beach, you can find that school, and you can find out information that detail where that school is with respect to what's going to be done, when it's going to be done, and where they are with respect to the phasing. So I would greatly encourage, I think it's a great communication, so I greatly encourage you to use that. And the other thing that I also encourage you is we have contact information, I believe. Helen, do we not? Where's Helen at? Oh, you're hiding in the back. Well, I was just saying we have contact information so that if you need to contact us, have a question, you're on the street and you talk to one of our residents. I happen to be a City of Deerfield Beach resident myself. See us on the street and somebody's got a question, they approach you, feel free to give us a call and we'll do our best to get you an answer right away. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and open it up for questions, and I appreciate the time you've given us and hope this has been helpful.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a question for you regarding, we were just notified that Deerfield Beach High School has been approved for a single point of entry. Is that separate from what the original plan was for the bond?
Not separate. Single point of entry is, I believe that one was in the original approved scope at Deerfield High. Yes, they were. And what we've done is, in the original bond program, as it was designed in 2014, there were over 70 single point of entry projects. Some of those projects, and I think this might be one of them, we pulled that single point of project out and we were doing it as a separate standalone project. Others we've included in the overall primary project. I think Deerfield Beach High is one of those single standalones.
Okay.
And that was in the original program.
Commissioner Drosky.
With respect to the single point of entry,
Yes, sir.
have you identified, are there any unintended consequences? I mean, usually to this, have you identified any cons to this that the public should be aware about, or something that needs to be, identified? Because there's always the unintended consequences. Have you contemplated anything that may come out of that?
We're involved in discussions about how to improve what we're doing all the time. To my knowledge, we haven't identified something that really has caused us to step back and think that it's not a good thing to do, that it does not enhance safety and security as we thought it would. What we've done is we've gone back, and we continue to go back to campuses that are in the planning stage and look very carefully at how fencing on the perimeter is set up right now, and how the operation of the school works, so that we can make sure that we indeed have a secure perimeter and that we indeed have that single point. But at this point, we haven't had anything come across that would indicate that we should be doing something different, that the standard should be changed.
Can you mention tomorrow night's meeting?
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tomorrow night, and is it at Casey, right?
No, it's,
Plantation.
yes, it is.
7?
You know what, if we could have one of you come up to the mic and deliver that, please, Ms. Rupert, if you don't mind.
I will do
Thank
that.
you.
Six.
We'll just need your name and name for the address for the record.
Nora
please.
Rupert, 4320 Northwest 3rd Street, Coconut Creek, Florida. And we are having our first, and not something that we haven't been asking for since February 14th, topic is on safety and security of our campuses. And that will be held at Plantation High School from 6 to 8:30. And you will have a panel of Mr. Runcie, Val Wanza, who's our chief of OSPA, and basically she's in charge of the schools and the principals, as well as our chief of police, Jeff Moquin, as our chief of staff. And we will have 2 microphones in the audience. We will go through as many questions as we possibly can, because quite frankly, trying to recover from February 14th was incredibly difficult for everyone, and it seemed a lot of communities, and I take my hat off for Mike Ryan and Sunrise, he started to put that task force together about safety and security in our schools, so, and several organizations, but we wanted something that we can actually share what our vision is going forward, as well as what we've done and what we've learned since we're going there. So I hope you all can come. It was put out on our website and went through the media, but it came up very quickly. So, thank you. Questions?
you
You want
very
me to
much.
answer, him to answer?
Vice Mayor Battle?
Yeah, just very quickly, looking at Deerfield Beach High School and the single point of entry, I usually walk that way sometimes, I'm not lazy. But kids come in, is this single point of entry for just visitors or for students as well?
It's supposed to be both.
It's supposed
to be both. Yes, because you don't want your kids coming in many different entrances, because if they can get in many different entrances, so can somebody else from the public.
Right, and you are aware of the situation at Deerfield. There's some portables that abut the campus.
Yes.
Kids come in on the backside, and I would imagine they don't go around or whatever. The other portion of that then is traffic. How are we looking, because the traffic is really bad on that front side just for visitors who are coming in. And now if you add students to the mix, with those cars and everything, it's gonna be kind of bad. We've tried to get everybody to put up some light at that entrance. Perhaps the school board wants to chip in and let us get a light.
I will actually bring that forward, but we are always told it's the county that does the roads and the signs, et cetera. But I know Mark Bogan is our commissioner. I'll certainly share that with him as well. And I did want to say, having gone through this tragedy, every one of our campuses has been looked at with a different set of lens. This is our new normal, and we have to keep moving forward with that, knowing that we have staff that are frightened, we have parents and community members and municipalities are frightened. It was never supposed to happen in Broward County, but it did. And exactly, nowhere. Exactly, no, I agree. But this is so close to home. So we've been going through our campuses. Mr. Runcie has announced several weeks ago that we'll be doing a very explicit security check on all of our campuses to see which are the pluses and minuses of getting in. And those particular conversations do fall under a closed door at a time, and I know that you can understand this. We really don't want to have people know that there's X amount of feet in our fences, because then that gives safety information out to the public. But you'll have a school-by-school issue on that, and actually I'll share some information that I bet our own team doesn't know about, because the board was surprised today when I left. Mr. Runcie had suggested going out for a $500,000 to be able to pay for some safety issues as well as our employees' salaries. That was nothing that we discussed before. It was just came out in a workshop, and the board members were actually quite stunned. But we're going to pursue looking at what that looks like, because we will not be able to make all the safety changes that we want, and it's very important. I certainly articulate this everywhere I go. I don't want to ever make a choice between something west and something east. I want to make sure in my district that from a community level, from our school level, for our parents, that whatever the security needs are that school, we need to meet them. And if we can't meet them equitably around the district, then we need to look elsewhere, because there's nothing more important than the safety of our students and staff. So further conversation will be had. Like I said, it was the very end when I was leaving, and all the board members' mouths kind of dropped. But we will be pursuing that and bringing it out to the public to see if that's something that they would support. And questions for me, or do you want to ask Curie? And be honest. I mean, goodness gracious, give it to us, because we know we're behind, and I think it's a wonderful PowerPoint, and I appreciate it, but we are behind. We've made incredible strides to catch up. I wish we were further along, especially on the single point of entries, because what was a very quaint neighborhood school is now, I'm getting phone calls from families because there is no fence on a particular area. And that was a different lens, like I said. It was parents could join their kids for lunch, and this is an elementary school, and the whole community would be involved in issues. Now, the number one phone call I got the next day was, we don't have a fence. How do we get this fence going? So it's a tough road forward, but one that we have to do, and we have to make sure that we can do the best for our kids. So,
Well, before you sit down, I do have some questions for you then. First off, we have more schools than that our kids actually feed into.
Absolutely.
If you're counting Bright Horizon is in Pompano, but we do have kids that feed into there. For Western Deerfield Beach,
Lions.
for the high school, it is Monarch High
Monarch.
School, and for middle school, it's Lions Creek.
Yes.
So one of the issues that we have is we have been funding school resource officers as a municipality since, for a very long time. And we've been doing it on the elementary school level. Now, we know that Broward County and the school board contribute on the high school and middle school levels. But that leaves the elementary school unfunded. I think considering what has happened, it's good to start early, start young. As Mr. Runcie says, even up to the grade of fourth grade, they're learning to read, but at that point they have to read to learn.
Right.
So it's good to start them early. We've been funding that solely as a municipality. We've taken that burden on, despite the fact that many of our kids that are fed into the schools here that are located in Deerfield Beach
Right.
are from other cities. Cities like, and not to pick on them, but Lighthouse Point doesn't have a single school within their boundary. They don't have to face that same budgetary issue that we do. We've made it a priority. Safety's always been a priority for us, and we have done that, but we don't feel it's fair that we are taking that burden on. It should be the school board in particular, and then Broward County supplementing it from there. It
Absolutely.
should not be the city of Deerfield Beach solely on that.
And I agree, and that's part of that millage conversation, specifically that Mr. Runcie had said, was not only for, because the budget for the next few years, we will not be able to afford raises in any of our employee groups at all, and we're going into a hiring freeze. So it's been tough getting money from Tallahassee. However, we are very thankful when our municipalities do come forward and cover the costs. I am very blessed that in the city of Coconut Creek, every single school located in Coconut Creek has an SRO. And that is greatly because the city of Coconut Creek takes on that burden. Should you have to in this time? No. And coming up with that municipal opportunity was half the reason that Mr. Runcie gave today, because we know that our municipalities are going to come with us for the ask, and we want to be able to support your end and not go out to the municipalities. I'll give you a little nugget here. Lighthouse Point is soon going to be asked for a contribution because the PTA and some very vocal parents are going to be speaking at the Lighthouse Point meeting from Norcrest and asking for them to be able to supplement some of the schools because they're sharing 2 and 3 schools to 1 SRO. So it's not off the table, and I know that the board is supportive of this, and if we can get the millage, if that's an option, if not, well, we have the SMART Fund, and we're going to be getting money back from the state for recovery. So we will be focusing on safety first.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission?
Yes, and I was negligent in saying that we were getting state money from the most recent legislative session. It's the amount of how we're going to figure it out. If it's 1 per school or 1 per 1,000, which is what the original language was, that'll be gone into further tomorrow night on that conversation. But we also have schools in some of our municipalities that don't have any SROs in there. So it's a big conversation that we look forward to having.
Well, I'm glad we're getting some movement on it because we've been complaining about that for a very, very long time, and it's fallen on deaf ears. I know not yours because you've been an advocate for it, but certainly with the school board as a whole, that this disparity and, quite frankly, unfairness has been allowed to go on for as long as it has, and it isn't. In my opinion, it's not right, and it's not a fair way to distribute.
No,
the money.
you have your own budgets, you have your responsibilities for your community. So this is all hands on deck, and this conversation can no longer be deferred, and we will be bringing that forward.
The other issue that I think comes up with this when it comes to, obviously there's, with safety and the money that you've gotten from the state that has come down, we know that we're just finding out really in the last few months where that money has been pulled to be able to put in there. We know that is a high priority. We hope that obviously as you focus on safety that we don't lose track of continuing to improve the grades for the schools We're the lowest grade in Deerfield Beach for our schools is a C,
C, I know.
which is not good.
No.
But it's a tremendous improvement from where we're at. We've had 5 schools that go up. We had
Yes.
one that went from an F to a C. We had one that went from a D to a B. And matter of fact, almost all of them, there were 5 that went up.
Yes.
So, but all of them are no lower than a C.
That's right.
But we certainly should be doing better. So we want to
Absolutely.
keep that focus, and every time I get to see you, that's what we're going to keep pushing.
Well, you know, I'm on the same page, and my community initiative was to increase volunteers in our schools. I reached out to you all. Many of your commissioners come to my schools and volunteer their time and tutor with our kids. It is a community commitment. I'd love to take credit for the improvement. All I did was keep the focus in the community to keep the pressure on downtown, as well as make sure that when we get changes in staff at a principal level or teachers, they are the best that we can possibly do. And I think your shining star right now is really Park Ridge Elementary School. So
Absolutely.
I'm very, very proud, and we're shooting for a B this term for your average, so
Great.
thank you.
I have one question for you, sir. So if you could just walk me through the process just briefly, and matter of fact, Eric, can you go to page 4 of the presentation, just on your process really quickly? So it started, you've done this in a phased process. You start with project planning, then to hire a designer, then to design the project. So basically, when you came up with the numbers for these projects before you went out for the bond, you gave rough estimates, correct?
There were estimates done by others than ourselves. We weren't in place at that time, but estimates were done. Remember I mentioned that there was an assessment?
Right.
Estimates were done at the same time as a result of that assessment.
Okay.
by
And
another
did
party.
those assessment numbers change once the money came in and once you were able to start doing project planning?
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
yes.
Commissioner Drosky, and then Vice Mayor Battle?
As part of the SRO discussion, and I'm glad the school board representative is here to hear this, it's a bigger discussion as well. For example, I only have one school in my district, Quiet Waters Elementary, and as luck would have it, I had a conversation with Principal Henning, not knowing this was coming up tonight, not that long ago, and the SRO is only there to the end of school, but they have a large aftercare program at Quiet Waters Park, and there is no SRO at that time as well. So the SRO should be there for the aftercare as well, because there's a large student population still on campus during that period of time, and there is no officer on the campus during that time.
And that's a great point that I want to tell you that the Boys and Girls Club have brought up to us as well. They service our children, and they don't have an SRO now. They're asking for the same thing. After school hours, when there's aftercare programs, why don't we have the SRO there? I don't know why that is, because Coconut Creek, they're there until the school's done. So I don't know, but I will find out for you. And certainly, you should have a dedicated SRO there when you have children there and staff. So I will bring that forward and get that answer for you. Okay.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Battle?
Yes, just very quickly, Mr. Mayor, since we have our Educational Advisory Committee in place, I would like to suggest that you all make the same presentation to them at some point in time. We only have one member here tonight, but it would be good if the entire advisory board could hear this presentation.
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Always good to see you, School Board Rep. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Mr. Morotis?
Item number 5, public hearing on an ordinance of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach, amending Section 9857 PID Planned Industrial District of the city's Land Development Code to add medical and laboratory uses and remove restaurants as a permitted use, limit the amount of outdoor seating allowed at restaurants approved as a conditional use, add uses intended to serve employees and patrons in the PID district as permitted accessory uses, and to remove the design standard requiring buildings to be 25 feet apart on the same site, amending Section 98-61 Schedule of Dimensional Regulations of the city's Land Development Code to increase the minimum yard setbacks, maximum building heights, and floor area ratios within a planned industrial district.
City Manager's staff has a presentation on this.
Yes, Mr. Power does in fact have a presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, thank you. Eric Power, Director of Planning and Development Services. I have a brief presentation just to illustrate some of the items for this code change tonight. So the Planned Industrial District, or the PID as we like to call it. Yeah, you know it's not working tonight. It wasn't working either, sorry. So what is the PID district? Is it gonna, this is great, love it. I know why it's not working. I apologize. So there are actually 5 PID districts. I apologize, I think that there might be a previous instrument that went earlier saying there was 4 districts. There's actually 5. I'll show you why it was like that by accident. But essentially all the districts are located at or around I-95. These are industrial districts. They're intended to be serviced more as a campus-style setting. They're not necessarily the type of industrial district where you might see heavy labor or machinery. These are kind of the places where you would see more of an office type of community. The districts really are intended to house a large number of population, to house large businesses, multiple employees. Some of the businesses that are in the PID district, just to give an example, would be like JM Family, UM Sylvester, SHL Pharma. If you just look at these are obviously large marquee businesses here in the city of Deerfield Beach. They all have multiple employees. They do research, they do technology, they do office work, so things like that. When we went and looking in possibly making changes to this district, the intention was the city staff is really looking to see what we can do to increase business-friendly development in the city of Deerfield Beach. One of the things that's important about business-friendly development is that you also have business retention. We want people who are in Deerfield Beach and are happy to be in Deerfield Beach to be able to live in place and to be able to grow in place. We want them to understand that, if you're here and you like being here and you want to continue being here, that if you develop, you want to be able to develop here as well. We don't want them looking elsewhere for a larger site, more property, things of that nature. And when we were speaking to multiple property owners within the PID districts, one of the things we heard over and over again was, you're kind of restrictive on your height, you're kind of restrictive on your setbacks. When we looked at the original intention of the district, the district was designed, again, in a campus-style setting. It was designed to have larger landscape setbacks, and it was designed to really be a sea of asphalt and parking. That's kind of like the way things were designed back in the 90s. But we went back and we looked at our code and we tried to see what it was that we could do to ensure that if a property did come back into development, wanted to grow, wanted to expand in a PID district, what they would be able to do. Essentially, all 5 of our PID districts are built out. Of course, the most recent PID district is the property that was the golf course on 95 in Hillsborough. It's owned by the Butters property where HCC Center is. Their last property is being ready to come in for building permit. And of course, you know about the hotel. So they're essentially built, and all the other properties in all the PID districts are built. And of course, you can see 95, how close it is. And I-95 is a very big, a very important aspect to the PID districts and why the PID districts are located where they are. So what makes them successful? So in our research, what made them successful is that they do have several accessory uses. So essentially, when you're in a PID district, you're sort of hidden away from, even though you're close to 95, maybe you're kind of hidden back from being able to run out to lunch or go to the bank, or maybe do some of the things you might be able to do during a lunch break. So they have easy access to 95, but we also want them to be able to stay where they are. A lot of employees today, a lot of these large businesses today, their intentions are to keep their employees there the entire time that they're there. They want them to either, if they want to work different hours, if they want to work later hours or earlier hours, if they want to be able to, come at weekends or holidays, the intention is to be able to make them comfortable and to work when they want to work and how they want to work. So by looking through these things, what we decided was we wanted to try to increase some of the code allowances, some of the accessory code uses. So first of all, we're making some changes to the setbacks and the height. What we'd like to propose tonight is that the height be regulated to 100 feet. These properties, which are along the PID district, mostly adjacent to 95. There's only one property that is actually adjacent to a residential district, which is the property we're just talking about, the Butters property that's currently being built. And so for that reason, if you are adjacent to a residential property, you will be adhered to the existing 45-foot height that is currently in the books right now. And it says that property is being built already. That property is actually less than 45 feet. It's about 35 feet. And then we're also, in relationship to the height, we're changing the floor area ratio. You know, if you change the height, you need to change the floor area ratio. We're proposing to move from 0.6 to 1. And then we're changing some of the dimensional regulations. We're actually not changing the setbacks for landscaping. The setbacks for landscaping at 25 feet isn't going to be changed. We are just kind of trying to make the PID district setbacks consistent with some of our other districts, and we're clarifying some of the setbacks that actually weren't in the code. That's all.
Commissioner Farnes?
Why do you want to limit the height?
Well, we're proposing to increase the height. We're only limiting the height if you are adjacent to a residential property. You're adjacent to a residential district.
Why?
We feel that because the existing properties that are adjacent to residential, you know, they were shown the plans for the development, they were part of the development, they were aware of it. If we change that right now, I don't know how well those residents would take that. We feel that that'd be a little, wouldn't be friendly to the residents.
Well, my question is this. If you have 45 feet and I have private home, I can't see over your building. So to me, it wouldn't matter if it's 45 feet or 100 feet. I still can't see over the building.
Right.
So if I were going to object to height and I'm in a single-family home, 45 feet is too high.
There are also things like shadows, shadows that cast over someone's yard and things like that. And traditionally, this city has kept to a more rigid setback for height when it's adjacent to residential. So we are keeping in line with other setbacks that we have throughout the city.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Battle?
I also want to mention air. When you have the taller the building and you get people that are adjacent to those 100 feet building, the air is cut off.
Right,
Okay.
negative airflow,
So,
right.
yes, the airflow is not there. And, of course, that one is right there in my district. And so I don't want to have, we went through a lot to get that in place. And I want it to stay like that,
Right.
basically.
And that's why the
Go back to the chart that you put up there. You showed the 4, and it seems like all 4 of those are in District 2, are they not?
JM's in 4.
JM's in 4.
I think east of 95, right? So I'm sorry, west of 95, those districts.
I go out to 12th Street, where the Wawa is.
12th Avenue.
12th Avenue, rather. District 2.
The
What is
Newport
that
Center.
one?
Newport Center.
Newport yours?
Newport Center is mine, yeah. And that's not adjacent. What's that? I'm looking at this one right on the bottom. Where is that?
The one at the very bottom is
Newport
Newport Center,
Center.
I'm sorry.
That's the Newport
The
Center.
one in the middle there, that's Goolsby Road.
Okay,
And then the one on the west of the red line is Jim Moran Boulevard.
okay.
And then the 2 properties, they look like they're one property, which is
Yeah.
why it's confusing. They're actually 2 separate PID districts. The one is the Fairway Drive, and the new one is the Hillsborough Technology Center.
Okay, and that's all the PIDs that we're gonna have in the city?
We're not proposing any more PIDs. I mean, I don't foresee.
Let me tell you where I'm going with this. A couple of months ago, we did something with the warehouses. Where are the warehouses going to be able to locate if they want to come into
So-
Deerfield?
so they're-
Hopefully not
right.
all in District 2.
Well, we have industrial districts throughout the city.
Mm-hmm.
And our B3 zoning code is comparable to I1 zoning code for a lot of other cities.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we've been working with. But again, what makes the PID district a little bit different than, say, an industrial district is the uses. You don't get as many industrial uses in the PID district. The majority of the businesses in the PID districts are office or
Okay.
research or technology. They're not necessarily that office warehouse component. I mean, they are there, but the vast majority of the buildings are office.
Okay, I'm asking these questions because I don't want District 2 to get saturated with warehouses. The other reason why because I don't see the 3rd Street or FAU Boulevard anywhere, and we have, and I guess, Mr. Manager, we're still proposing that to be a medical corridor there.
Yes, Vice Mayor Battle. The medical corridor would actually be to the south where Broward Health North is, and then the FAU Research Park. The goal would be to try to recruit other type of health-related or medical-related businesses or industries into the FAU or Florida Atlantic Research and Development Park, or even into Newport Center where the University of Miami Sylvester Cancer Clinic is located. So yes, that would kind of be a corridor along there, but where we're doing the actual land use, or where we'll be proposing the actual land use change, will be closer to Sample Road and up 3rd Avenue. in the
Okay, but
southern
at
part.
some point in time, not cutting you off, we'll be able, Eric, to mesh the Sylvester with that corridor?
Well, so Sylvester is in the PID district. They're in the Newport Center. So they are part of that. Just because the zoning district across 95 is not PID doesn't mean that those similar uses can't be there.
That's what I'm
It's
getting
just
at.
it's not a PID district.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Drosky?
2 questions. One, what's the genesis for this? What caused this to come up?
So the city is going through a comprehensive code change. We're in the process right now of looking at what I like to call our niche districts, which are the smaller districts that are very particular. So this one got through the hopper a little faster than the Cove district, which you'll be seeing soon, the PUD district, and like the DBR district and things like that. Those are what we call the niche districts we have in the city, and that's what we're reviewing right now.
Okay. Second question, the inclusion of medical, does that include the facilities for medical marijuana?
No. Thank you. We've had some discussion that the current code is not broad enough in what some of the medical research, at that particular section you're referring to, is about research. And we wanted to ensure that businesses like Sylvester and businesses that are like Sylvester are aware of the fact that our code permits them. A lot of times, I mean, from what I know of my job, we get people who will read the code and not even contact the city. And I'm talking major corporations. And if it's not clear to them that it's permitted, they have questions, they have issues. So we want to make sure that this particular use is clear that it's permitted. Right now, I would tell you this use is already permitted based on the definition of research and things of that nature, but we wanted to make sure it was just clear.
So is that a clear no or clear yes?
The medical research is clear that it is a permitted
Medical
use.
research?
Yes. The sentence you're referring to is about the research.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other one question, Eric, regarding the elimination of restaurants in there, the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, so honestly, this is a mistake in the code. For some reason, it's listed twice. It's listed as permitted use. It's also listed as a conditional use. So, that's just a mistake from the code.
Yeah, well, it'll be a
Conditional use. The intention of this code, they didn't want, original intention of the code was they didn't want people from the outside really be coming in. It's really meant to service the people who are in the district.
Right.
So if I put a Fridays there, people are coming in from the code. So they limit it to one, and that's a conditional use. And unfortunately, the code read both ways. It was permitted and conditional.
So you chose to make it conditional?
Yes. We felt
Okay.
that was better for the district.
All right. So, but yet you're allowing the brew pub, the brewery type situation to be allowed there?
That was existing in the code. It's existing in every district of our code.
Okay.
We've actually discussed in multiple situations about how we want to amend that. I find it very admirable that my predecessors added that in the code well before other districts, other cities did. Unfortunately, it's not been very successful. As you know, we don't have any. Yet. But we're actually looking at changing that section of code, and when we change the section of code, we'll change it for every district. So
Okay.
it's not being touched today because it'll get changed in the future for every district.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to open it up to the public. Any from the public care to comment on this item? Anyone would like to, please come forward. Name and address.
My name is Joe Hines, I'm at 559 Northwest 47th Terrace. As a landowner or investor, when I hear that you're going to limit a building height at 100 foot from residential property, I would just simply move my building back to 101 foot. To go up to 100 foot in elevation, not be restricted to the 45 foot. I think the commission, if they're going to approve, allow buildings to be built 100 foot, they ought to do it on a case-by-case basis, because this, all these buildings are going to be going up to this 100-foot height that the city allows that, and that might not be desirable for some of these locations. I think it should be on a case-by-case basis, because you just simply move a building back one more foot, and you go up another 55 foot. Think of how much more valuable that property would be to you. You're not going to be building a 45-foot building on a 100-foot line. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close the public to be heard. I think that was addressed, that anything that's adjacent to anybody, to residential, that would not happen. Everything else would be, the height would be going up for similar types of scenarios. There's really nothing around it that would be affected. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. That's what I thought was explained. Any other commission comments? Looking for a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Drosky?
Yes?
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Battle?
Yes.
Mayor Gantz?
Yes.
Time for public comments on non-agenda items, and no language, no comments shall be made on the personal qualities of any person, and no language which would offend persons of ordinary sensibility shall be permitted. This is the time to speak on items that are not on the agenda.
Okay. I'd like to have Glenn Sullivan come up first.
Yes.
Good choice.
It's not our choice.
How'd you get it?
Glenn Sullivan, 2377 Deer Creek Trail, Deerfield Beach, Florida. Good evening. At the March Commission meeting, I brought up a couple of things that local communities do to provide transparency to their citizens. One of them being the financials monthly. I was able to access one copy via the public records request, and so I can continue to do that monthly, or the city can maybe go forth and provide that transparency to all citizens and place that on the website. The second one was metrics. The city created metrics with the budget process, but that just kind of, as far as the citizens go, just kind of is in a black hole until the next budget process. So that's another item of transparency that citizens can get to see as the year goes by instead of waiting for the following year. And I would just say that there's another subject for the metrics that I think would be very important to most people, would be this building program with the bond. I'm sure there's some very good metrics that can be prepared and tracked for citizens to see how the city's doing and moving on with those building projects. Thank you.
Rita Massey.
Rita Massey, 349 Northeast 19th Avenue. On the 4th of April, I had the need to call 911. And unfortunately, I called it 4 times, and there was no response. I ran across the street to my neighbor because I thought there was something wrong with my phone. She couldn't get them. I called the substation, told the deputy what I was calling about. He said, hold on, and connected me to a recording. And I finally called another number, I guess the main number, and they were able to help me. When the deputy finally came and I made him aware that I had called 4 times, he said, that's what's going on the island here, Rita. The reception is very poor. That is totally unacceptable. It was somebody's life was in danger. They saved his life, but it's unacceptable. On the other hand, I had the need to go to the substation the other day, and this lovely, lovely lady who was taking care of the counter, Faith Marguletta, was over and above the call of duty. She took so much time and energy and helped me so much that I walked out of there and I praised the Lord for her, because she just was, she has to be commended, because when I say over and above the call of duty. So I really want to commend Faith Marguletta for her efforts. And also, nobody ever said another word about those 16 signs on that one little stretch of land down there. Anybody ever find out about it? Are they going to stay there? Are they necessary? And what's the story with them? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public care to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Denise Bogner, 1157 Southwest 26th Avenue. After last week's meeting, when there was a lot of discussion about the stormwater drainage, and Commissioner Drotsky came up with a point that in some cases neighborhoods already pay into this fund, it made me stop and think that in my neighborhood, Waterford Homes, we don't pay into a fund, but our streets don't flood. So I'm thinking that this fund really needs to go for the whole city, not just pull parts out because of whatever reason. Waterford Homes shouldn't have to pay, but yet I drive through the city on all the streets that flood. So I hope who's ever going to be looking at that as an objection or pulling it out of that fund, stop and think about that part of it, and that if you do pull them out, the rest of us will be paying more. So just something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Thank you. It will be super quick, I promise. Nora Rupert, still live in Coconut Creek, 4320 Northwest 3rd Street. And Mr. Superintendent just texted me and said they just finished their meeting and he sends his regrets. So that was, I needed to pass that on to you. Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity tonight.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rupert.
My name is Joe Hines at 559 Northwest 47th Terrace. I have a handout. There's some documents for each one of the commissioners to take a look at. It earlier came up about this monthly financial report. It is part of the city charter, which makes it city law. If we're not going to follow the city law, I don't know what we are going to follow around here. And I'd like to, maybe at the end of the meeting, the city manager might explain if he has been giving these documents to each one of these commissioners, each one of you commissioners, for the last 8 years since he's been here, or if he's missed some, or so on and so forth. The document you're looking at is an interesting document. I have the public records request that ended September the 30th of 2017, which would be the end of the last fiscal year, and it gives totals, and it gives budget totals, and it gives actual totals. And I picked out one item, and if you look at the top of that document, you'll see that item is other contractual services, and it's found in 45 locations. And I show you each page that is located on. I show you the fund it came from, the department it came from, name of the department, and so on and so forth, and then the actual numbers. Now, when you look down to the bottom, you'll see the actual numbers in the budget were $8,693,000, and the actual was $6,085,000, which is about 2.6 million difference. So the actual is 2.6 million lower than the budget. Now, why is this important? Well, last week, you guys put a tax on us. And I said at the time that tax was a hoax, and I'll call it a fraud. If you guys were looking at these documents that I'm looking at right now and saw these documents right here, you'd know that there's $2.6 million left over last year that wasn't counted, and it's surplus. And you put a $2.6 million tax on us somewhere in that neighborhood under this stormwater. This stormwater tax ought to be rescinded. You've got the money, you hide the money, you're not counting the money, but you're putting a tax on us. Now that is not right. And I'd like to have the manager explain his reasoning behind that. And if any of you folks on the commission would explain, have you been reading these documents? Are you getting these documents? And I do know the answer for some of those, what some of those responses would be, but I'd like to know what each one of you would have to say about this. I think this is really important. This is financial. This is not a zoning issue. This is not a sign issue. This is not some kind of little variance. This is our money. And our taxes are going up, and you guys have gained $151 million in extra revenue over the past 6 years, which is $25 million a year, and you can't find money to fix a stormwater problem, which you acknowledge exists. Could I have one more minute, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay.
I would ask you to change your tone, though, please.
My wife says I talk too loud, too.
That's all right.
You and her get along just fine when it comes to me talking. If the stormwater is that important of an issue, if it really is that important of an issue, it should have been addressed a long time ago, especially when you're running $25 million accumulations, extra accumulations every year. If it's not that important, then it's like I said last week, this is nothing but a money grab. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, for the extra minute. Thank you.
Passion's okay, shouting isn't, that's all. Nothing wrong with that. Anyone else from the public here to speak? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to close the public to be heard. Okay, we can go to the next item.
A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach confirming the election results of Lee Magnuson to the non-uniform municipal employee retirement committee. It's a ministerial act in approving the results.
Anyone from the public care to comment on this item? Not seeing anyone coming forward, I'm going to close the public to be heard on this.
I'd like to make a motion to approve. This is an excellent choice.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes unanimously. Congratulations.
Next is a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach approving an amendment to the contract between the City of Deerfield Beach and Calvin Giordano and Associates to provide for an additional code enforcement officer to perform code compliance and enforcement functions primarily in the areas of solid waste recycling, landscaping, storm debris, and nuisance abatement. Authorizing an amendment in the annual amount not to exceed $110,000.
City Manager?
Yes, if it would please the City Commission, I would like to have Mr. Chad Gressick give a brief summary of what this position would do. Again, this is not a full-time employee. It is actually a contract position through Calvin Giordano and Associates for code compliance. Thank you.
Thanks,
Chad.
Okay, good evening. Chad Gressick, Director of Sustainable Management. So you got a little bit of a taste last night when we spoke about hurricane debris at the hurricane workshop. Essentially, the city collects an inordinate amount of bulk debris throughout the year, approximately 100,000 cubic yards, which equates to about 12,000 tons of material. Because of the city's generous bulk collection schedule, which is once a week, we believe, and we firmly believe, because of the volumes and the tonnages that are generated, that the system and the program is being abused by private contractors, by private landscapers who go to a home or go to a community, trim hedges, trim bushes, put that material out. They have a contract with that homeowner or agreement or quote to haul that material away. And essentially they don't. They leave it there and the city comes and picks it up. And essentially the homeowner is paying for it twice. We also believe that this is happening with contractors as well throughout the city. So This position, or this code position, essentially would add an additional code inspector specifically to cover solid waste, and initially mainly focus on bulk issues. Obviously, one of the challenges is catching these individuals in the act. So this code inspector would most likely work in off hours, on the weekends, after hours, when a lot of these activities occur. We do believe, that other cities have programs like this, which essentially has deterred them to do this type of activity in their communities. So they come and dump in Deerfield because there are no existing code inspectors overseeing this. We do have representatives from CGA that actually represent Pompano. Pompano has had a program in place. We do understand that the Pompano program is successful, so we'd be more than happy to have them come up and talk about Pompano's results and their program, if that's something that you'd like them to do. From our perspective, again, this is there's a problem, and we do have staff that works with code to help to address these issues. And when we implemented the sanitation division several years ago, illegal dumping was one of their key focus areas, and they have improved in that area. We have seen a reduction in illegal dumping, but at the end of the day, our staff turns that material over to a code enforcement inspector. So essentially what this is going to allow us to do is streamline the process, allow them to be on the forefront, work with our staff, more eyes out there, individuals out there during the times when these types of things occur. And hopefully we will develop metrics such as how many yards that we collect, and we will see those metrics hopefully decline, and that will show that the program has been successful and it has value to the city. If it does not show those positive metrics, then we have the option to cancel. I believe there's a 30-day notice to opt out, and we can do that. So, that's something that our staff's going to oversee this program. It's going to be a partnership with CGA to hopefully address these issues that are occurring throughout the city, and hopefully, again, ultimately reduce the amount of bulk debris and volumes that are currently collected in the city. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Parnas?
One of the things I see is a problem is that we don't have a code enforcement officer working on Sunday. And that seems to be get out of jail free for every illegal contractor that does work in our city. And if this new code enforcement officer is going to be working at odd hours, I'd like him to be available. That if we see a truck with a ladder putting in an air conditioner on Sunday, that we have somebody available to stop it.
Vegetation or something?
We don't have anybody on Sunday. Question is, why not?
Well, the part of that question I can answer is one of the things that this individual will do, if approved tonight, will develop a registration program for landscapers as well as contractors. They will also be working hand in hand with the planning department to see permits and make sure that when there is construction activities happening throughout the city, that they are permitted, and then they know, hey, there's a construction activity that's supposed to happen here. We can have our code person be on the lookout for that type of material and those types of activities. So as far as working off hours, absolutely. A lot of this stuff, you're right, happens on the weekends when there are less individuals out there looking and catching this type of activity. So that is one of the things that we are hoping to establish is a schedule where they're going to have the best opportunity to catch these instances in the act.
Okay. Vice Mayor Battle and then City Manager, if that's all right.
Yes.
I think I may be the wrong person to be up here asking questions because of how I felt about this contract from the very beginning. But I do have a couple of questions, and you can bring the guy up, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
Come on up.
So we have Mario here from Pompano Beach, and we also have obviously Mr. Pita, who works in Deerfield. So they're both available to answer questions as needed.
How many code enforcement officers do we currently have?
Good evening, Mario Sotolongo. I'm a co-compliance manager for Calvin Jordan and Associates. Currently, you have 6 inspectors here in the city and 1 supervisor.
We have 6 and 1 supervisor. 6 is and I assume that there are 1 for each district.
Well, the inspection zones are laid out a little different than your commission districts. So there are 6 inspectors out in the city at all times during the week.
You're calling them inspectors. Tell me what's the difference between the code compliance officer that you're asking for here and these inspectors that you currently have out in the field?
He's not asking for it. We are.
We're asking.
Yes.
On your behalf, because I was told by Andy that we have to do that on your behalf. Or is that how it works? Somebody please.
Well, we retain them, and they're providing the code, the officer.
Calvin Giordano isn't requesting this, the city is.
The city is requesting it, and who will this particular person report to? Calvin Giordano or?
My department.
Your department?
Correct.
So you're going to have everything to Calvin, so we can move Calvin out of this discussion, right? Clear it up for me, because
Yeah, so just quickly, Vice Mayor Battle, the position will be reporting to Chad Gressick's department, the sustainable management. However, the position will be within Calvin Giordano, so it is a contract position through them. However, that position, whether it's male or female, don't know, but he or she will be reporting directly to someone within that department. Meanwhile, they'll still be coordinated and supervised directly through Bernard Pita, who's our code compliance manager for the city of Deerfield Beach, and he reports, of course, to Eric Power. So the day-to-day operations, though, Chad and his team will say, we need you to go out into these street areas, but supervision of that position will actually be Mr. Power. And I have him on standby because I'd like him to make a few comments about this as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
that answers a lot
Yeah.
for me, because when we sat through that meeting last night, and and I told you I was on the fence, and I'm still on the fence, I would get off the fence if I could be assured that that person is going to be reporting to Chad.
Thank you. City manager?
Yeah. Thank you. If I could just have Mr. Power make a few comments about how
Sure.
this will operate. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric Power, Director of Planning Development Services. So the Planning Development Services Department essentially is 3 divisions: planning, building, and code enforcement. The building and code enforcement departments are actually managed through a contract with CGA, and so I'm responsible for managing both of those contracts. The contract that's before you tonight, what you're actually seeing tonight, is a change in the contract to current code enforcement, because we are adding the 1 position. And essentially what the precipice of it, and the reason why it's coming out the way it's doing right now, is because CGA is currently here. They're currently doing code enforcement for the city. The process, if we went and hired someone particularly just for this position, there may be a conflict, it may not work. What we would like to do, what we think is the best option for this, is actually take one of the employees we currently have in code enforcement and put them in the sustainable management department. Now, that person would be directly under Chad's supervision, as well as the CGA supervision. Unfortunately, they get 2 bosses. I get to yell at Bernard, and so does his boss. So, but I don't yell at Bernard. But that's what happens. And so, what we think the best option here to make sure that this works and that there's communication, just as Commissioner Parnes was mentioning earlier, that if this gentleman is out, or this woman is out on an off night, on a weekend, on an evening, and they see something, that's going on that has nothing to do with waste, they can do something about it, or they can contact 911, or they can contact Bernard, and so it's an extra set of eyes and ears in the city, which is excellent, especially during off hours. But the way that this is being managed is that the person who is going to be in this position, they're already familiar with the city because they're currently working here. You know, they already understand the code enforcement process. They already understand the special master process. They already understand exactly what it is that we're looking for in a code officer. And then my department will be bringing on a new person and training them to go through the process. But we really think that's the best way to make this effective, make this work.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
And see, therein lies my problem with this. I'm here thinking that what we approved with the Giordano firm, that all of our people were capable of doing exactly what you explained to me. And I could not understand sitting here why I don't see them out in the neighborhoods on the weekend, at night, or whatever the case may be, because in my mind's eye, code enforcement is just that. It's a 24-hour job. You have staff on board already. Why can't these particular people be cross-trained or whatever to do this function? It's just
I understand that. Unfortunately, it is not a 24-hour job, although I think Mr. P would argue with me because I think he works more hours than I do, and he's here more than I am. But it is not a 24-hour job. We do have one officer in the field on a Saturday. We do not currently have an officer here on Sundays. That is not part of the contract, but I did speak to Commissioner Prentice about this yesterday, and I will be looking into how we can amend that for the future. That is unfortunately not currently part of the contract.
okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Drosky?
It's my understanding that this $110,000 is already in last year's budget, so this isn't new money we're bringing to the table. Is that correct? I want to clarify that.
That is correct, and we certainly wanted to bring this forward sooner in the budget year, but because of the hurricane, everything got pushed back. And this is actually going to be funded out of the solid waste fund, so it's not coming out of the general fund, and it is budgeted in this year's budget, correct?
And the $110,000, that's not the base salary. That includes the benefits and everything. Is that correct?
That's what I understand, correct, and a vehicle.
So how are we going to, now into the actual program, how are we going to, in essence, grade this employee for, how are we going to measure, the results of this program?
I think there's going to be two key metrics. Number one, volume, right? So we want to see a reduction in volume that our trucks are collecting because the concept is that these landscapers and these contractors are taking the material themselves as they're supposed to, as well as also, deterring illegal dumping and those types of activities. So we'll see reduction in volume there, hopefully, and also revenue enhancement. Some of these pickups require additional fees. If there's too much volume out there, there's an additional fee that's required. So by getting on top of those a little bit more, we would see some revenue enhancement. So reduction in costs and revenue enhancement. So those are really the two key metrics that we would see.
But how does that work practically speaking? I mean, if it's one officer working overnight hours in the city, they can't be everywhere at all times. I'm
Yep.
sure, I know in District 4 we have trouble areas. I'm sure District 2 has trouble areas. So I'm sure there's key areas, but you can't be everywhere at once. So if the officer is in District 2 and they're dumping in District 4, yes, he or she may see it later, but how do you identify who then was the culprit for putting that the illegal dumping there?
Yeah, so we know where a lot of this is happening, obviously. But one of the key ways to address that initially, we believe, is creating the registration program. So if we register licensed and approved contractors in the city, we have a list. Hey, this is where we do our work. These are the days that we do our work. And therefore you have to, by ordinance, by city ordinance, take that material that you generate and dispose of it at your cost. So by generating that registration process, we believe that's going to address a significant amount of the issue right off the bat. And then we know where these hot spots are throughout the city. We can focus our efforts. And again, it's not just going to be the officer. It's going to be city staff, other code officers, another set of eyes out there to hopefully address these issues.
But I mean, the illegal dumping is just that, illegal. So if you create the registration, the folks that sign up aren't going to be the illegal dumpers. It's going to be the folks from other cities that come in the middle of the night and put those huge pile of tires or the hurricane debris.
Correct, but if we have someone out looking for that, right, and catching them and starting to deter that type of activity, they may not come here anymore. Because, you know, Pompano has a program, Boca has a program, we don't have a program. So they come in here, they know we may or may not be out on the streets, and essentially becomes a dumping ground. Will this solve the problem 110% or 100%? Absolutely not. But it's, again, another way for us to address this growing concern that we discussed last night, that we just are generating a lot of material in the city. And this is one of our proposed solutions to address that concern.
I mean, Pompano's here tonight, you said. Can they present us with some historical data how their program worked, that they went from, you know, how much the illegal dumping decreased in their city? I mean, how effective their program has been?
I hope so, yeah. We have Mr. Sotolongo from Pompano, so he can certainly hopefully go into that detail.
Again, good evening, Mario Sotolongo. I'm at this portion representing the city of Pompano. This program started in Pompano late 2016, and if I can paint a picture for you, if you're driving a truck down a road and the road is full of nails, all we were doing was replacing tires. So right now we're trying to address those nails. We brought on board 2 inspectors, and to kind of answer your question earlier, these are code inspectors, certified code inspectors. So there is no difference between one and the other. So if that person is out there looking for bulk trash and for illegal dumping, and he sees an air conditioning being installed on Sunday, he or she can address that. So that's, in a nutshell, how we envision the program. So back in 2016, just to give you an idea on numbers.
You say, all right.
I'm sorry.
I might forget, but he's talking about they might see another violation, not bulk trash related.
Still
Do they
can
deal
ask
with that then?
He or she can, yes.
Can,
and
or do
again,
they?
it's a code inspector. They are qualified to identify the violation and address it as they drive through the city. And again, the idea is to have, again, late shifts and weekends. So in the city of Pompano, in the year 2016, looking at the first quarter, again, we were driving the truck and replacing the tires. At that time, we generated in the first quarter only 47 incidents for dumping or bulk trash related violations. In the same period, in the year 2017, we had those 2 inspectors already on board. They came in late in the year, right around September. In the same period, in 2017, we generated 557 code-related incidents for bulk and trash-related incidents. So going through that process, we could clearly see the decline in the dumping and in the bulk trash-related incidents. So the first quarter of this year, we only have 261 incidents. So there is a clear indication that these incidents are in a decline. We do have a spreadsheet that we created early on in the process where we identified 31 dumping sites. And these dumping sites are the ones that we inspect on a regular basis. Again, unfortunately, we are, by way of pushing these illegal dumpers out of Pompano, some of them we're pushing into your city. The city of Fort Lauderdale has a dedicated crew, 2 inspectors and 1 police officer for this task. So years ago, we felt that, again, these activities were being pushed from Fort Lauderdale to Pompano. We have been able, in the past few months, to also, through BSO, secure a deputy who is going to be working with us. So it's a work in progress. Again, are we going to solve 100% of your problems? Probably not, but we believe that we can make a big dent in it.
Thank you. Commissioner Miller, did you have any more you wanted to add?
Well, you talk about the incidents going down, but then I want to relate it to the poundage being collected or not being collected. I was going to ask Eric, or Chad, what is a given period where you say, oh, yeah, we collected 50 tons less in the last 6 months than before, and it correlates with 65 arrests or violations. I'm not sure if you got an exact science here on knowing your progress, although we do meet something that we don't have currently, is we have somebody in code enforcement on off hours. And is this person primarily going to be after 5 and on weekends, so the places when most people don't work?
These activities happen when most people are, off duty, city employees. So we feel that the best result we'll get when someone is out there during those evening hours and weekends.
Is Pompano's experience a revenue neutral, or is the city investment in more code enforcement they're found it to be saving money in trash collection, bulk trash collection? Or is it it's not enough time to measure, or how would we say that?
It's a combination. It's a combination of those factors. Code is not a revenue, it's not a revenue machine. We believe that it's all about compliance. We try to clean up the mess that some of these folks bring to our cities. There is some revenue. There is some revenue in the form of invoicing that is being done to collect this trash that is either placed, by residents illegally. There is a cost-saving factor when you don't have to spend that much money in picking up this trash because it's effectively driven out of the city.
May I just ask, just
Sure.
the mechanics of what happens? So in Pompano, you have an inspector, and he sees down the block, it appears a landscape truck is putting their palm fronds on some swale somewhere.
Right.
He drives up. What do you say? No, you can't do it. Put it back on your truck. No, I'm going to give you a thing. Or is he called BSO? What happens?
Okay.
And what percentage of them do we actually catch, or do we just find piles here and there?
Yes, the largest percentage of the action is actually finding those piles out there and trying to
So finding the piles, which we already know we have piles.
Correct. But through that, we're trying to identify where they come from, effectively identify where they come from. You're talking about construction materials, and you're talking about landscaping debris. So that's first and foremost, the idea of having someone dedicated to this. Where is this trash coming from? Where is it being generated? And why is it coming to our cities? The vacant lots, of course, are renowned for attracting illegal dumping. However, we have noticed also that we have contractors who reside in the city, who are tenants, and they do the work, say for Lauderdale, Coronado Creek, wherever it may be, and they bring that trash home because they know that someone's going to pick it up. So they are saving that tipping charge. So in those cases, it's fairly easy for us to identify who brought it, who dumped it, because it's obviously in front of someone's house. But it's not an exact science. I can appreciate your concern. There's definitely a lot of work that goes into it.
So what you just said,
Sure.
if a particular contractor tends to put stuff in front of his house every week, you're saying, this is not the norm. This is obviously from his workplace. He does kitchens or something like that. So what do? You say stop doing it, or you fine them, or what do we do?
No, again, I'm talking about.
Well, I need nuts and bolts and why 110 grand, is it going to make us money, save us money, or what? Theoretically, it sounds like it's supposed to save us money. I just trying to get a visual how it happens.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Thanks. I'm sorry. Thank you.
I don't mean to be giving you a
Sorry.
hard time.
No. Unfortunately, I've been doing this for so long. I still call them officers, and it's my bad. I don't mean to do that. They're inspectors, and they're inspectors for a reason. They are actually doing detective work. They go to neighbors. They knock on doors. hey, did you see something last night? The issues that occur, they happen on almost a timely basis. We actually can almost tell, hey, this Saturday we know we're going to find trash here. So that officer, they're going to be there in a stakeout situation. Yeah, they're probably going to call BSO if there's a certain situation that has to occur. But the issue is, you do catch them in the act, you do offer the citation, and you are going to charge them for it, and they're also going to take that debris off and haul it out themselves. It's both. But like I said, the position and the process that we're doing this in, it is a fairly new concept here in South Florida. Not that many cities were doing it prior to just a few years ago. But what we've been finding is that the cities that are doing it have been effective, and that what I think Mario was just mentioning too is that there's almost a squeeze, okay? Because there are cities to the south of us and there are cities to the north of us that are doing it, and because these people that are actually illegally dumping recognize that these cities are now dangerous for them to dump, it's sort of squeezing itself into Deerfield, and we're feeling that pressure. We're feeling that intensity of more and more dumping. So this is the purpose for why we need this. But, every inspector that we have, regardless of a new position or the current inspectors we have, what they really do is they get down to the bottom of what is the cause of the issue. When we talk about compliance, because that is the goal, we talk about compliance, making sure that it doesn't happen again, making sure that the item is fixed. This is different, all right? This is a nuisance, all right? This is a crime. This is an issue that can affect the health and public safety of the city. So it isn't something like someone whose pool is dirty, their lawn's a little bit too long. We give them some time to correct it. Maybe they didn't know about it. This is a cease and desist.
May I just say this? Yeah. And I'm starting to get the drift when you told me investigation, because I could just see one guy driving around and something happened in District 4 and they're dumping in District 2. The likelihood of somebody catching people in the act, my gut is it's not that likely, but now that you say part of it is investigation, you find the chronics that do it routinely. Some lots always get hit. Right. So eventually people identify the regular people. I'm kind of getting that. Right. But I suggested last night that if we've got people from the south, people in the north regulating this, why don't we have the highest fines of all the cities in the area? So now the illegals, if they are caught, and they can be stealth, but if they are caught, I want to go for the max. I don't want to start off with a slap. I want to start off with $5,000.
Well, so unfortunately what we can do is only what the state allows. However, having said that, we are allowed to immediately say that this is a repeat offender, and that every time we catch them doing something, they get the maximum fine. And so we are allowed to go in front of the special magistrate and make that declaration, and then he agrees with us, and then every single time we catch that person in the act again, they get the maximum fine immediately.
So but our city can't be any more than the city above and below us.
Unfortunately, no. We are regulated by the state requirements of what a daily fine is. But we are allowed to ask the magistrate for the maximum daily fine, and for that to be repeat every single time that particular person comes, again with a violation. And again, and I understand why Mario has been as maybe. We haven't had the conversation necessarily about what are the hours of this officer, all right? But we can't say exactly what the hours of the officer are because, we don't want to say what the hours of the officer are because then people will be, but the hours of the officer will really be dictated based on what the work capacity is and where and when it's determined through Chad's department, where we think we see the problems consistently and how they're occurring.
With this, has Pompano done any education to the public saying, we've got people looking for this and call this number or something to assist proactively even? We got Million Eyes exposed to two guys.
And you'll actually be seeing from me in the upcoming months an overhaul again of how code compliance is currently working and changes that we're making not just to the land development code but to the policies, the applications, the forms, and our outreach. So you'll be seeing that coming from my department soon.
Okay, thank you. I think I got it.
Thank you. Let me just simplify this for everybody. It's pretty clear that what this is nothing but adding another code enforcement officer, and it's a specialized code enforcement officer that's going to specialize in illegal dumping off-hour monitoring. That's what I'm understanding.
Yes.
As well as a lot of these other details that you have in here. Quite frankly, I feel that our current code enforcement officers are able to do all of those. All this is an additional code enforcement officer off hours specializing in illegal dumping
Yes.
and trying to deal with some of our bulk trash issues that is absorbing it. Because we do, as was pointed out last night, we do have, that is being taken advantage of because we have it weekly. And not a lot of cities have that. And because of that, people take advantage of it. Contractors, you can have them on that registration. I guarantee you that there is a large amount of people that are going to sign up to be on that registry that are still going to be doing some illegal dumping. It happens all the time. My problem with this, is that back on June 25th, 2013, during our budget workshop, we created a whole division after we got a discounted rate on our garbage collection, tipping fees at the time, to create an entire department. All right, and that's what we did. And part of it, and I'll read from it, and this was part of Mr. Gressick's presentation, the main target area, this is sanitation division. Mr. Gressick said that the new division is to keep the city clean and green with a focus on the collection of waste and recyclables. The main target areas will be beach neighborhoods, streets, main thoroughfares, waterways, parks, city facilities, bus stops, and recycling. He commented on illegal dumping with tires and the expense associated with that. To assure the success of the program, there needs to be solid waste and recycling code enforcement and compliance aspect. My understanding back in 2013 is that's what I was getting when we were creating that department. It sounds to me like we had created that department to clean up the mess, but we didn't leave ourselves with the ability to curtail it. Is that what I'm understanding? Is that about accurate?
I'd ask Mr. Gressick to answer that.
Sorry, I got a long memory on this.
Sure. So yes and no. You know, again, our staff has been successful with working with code on addressing illegal dumping. It has gone down. It's gotten better. We just need some additional help at this point, and it is going to be funded out of the solid waste fund. So it is coming out of budgeted monies.
Okay. You said you've been successful. What are the metrics on that? Because if an impressive number that was thrown out tonight was what Pompano has done. We were citing this, we've added this, this is now what we're doing. What are we currently citing right now for illegal dumping?
I don't know if I have those. Bernard, do we have those numbers offhand? Okay.
I would come loaded for bear next time on this sort of stuff. That's the kind of information that's very helpful. You are right. I will say this, that this is a budgeted item. There's going to be no net impact on the residents right now because your garbage, it's not coming out of the general fund. It's coming out of the solid waste fund. They budgeted for it within solid waste. There's been no increase in your trash pickup or anything like that. It's the same cost, but it's still the same money. So when I look at this, I would have liked to have seen those metrics because I think that you're on your path to making a good argument. But I don't see the metrics here that are laid out. And if I'd seen those, I think you guys heard me last night. I was pretty clear because I remember back in 2013 having a problem with the creation of that department, that I was a solid no. Right now, you're on to something, but you don't have the information to really present it properly, in my opinion. I would much rather see the metrics. You're telling us that we can cancel this at any time and get rid of this individual if we're not seeing the dividends being paid off, but I want to know what we're measuring it up against. Okay, that's my biggest concern right now. I know we've got all these lights lit up, but I'm going to open up to the public. We have one person that wants to speak, and we can come back to it, if that's all right.
Fine.
Thank you. I think everybody's gotten a turn to speak. Is that correct up here? All right. We have Mr. Glenn Sullivan.
Glenn Sullivan, 2377 Deer Creek Trail, Deerfield Beach, Florida. Some good points, and it really tends to make you think that the 9 to 5 code enforcement probably doesn't work, not just for landscaping and illegal dumping, but all codes. You don't want to tell them the hours of operation on off hours, but they know what it is during regular work weeks. So has anyone looked at staggering hours. Maybe having someone work maybe a 12 to 8 shift once a week, or a weekend once a month, instead of hiring yet another person. One person, I don't see a 16 square mile city. If he doesn't catch the person in the act, what are you going to do? I mean, if I have a load of tree limbs and stuff in front of my house, is he automatically going to assume that I had a landscaper do it and give me a ticket? I mean, the only way this person's going to be able to do anything is if he catches them in the act. And what's the likelihood of that? So I think $110,000 on an $800,000 budget is not a good investment, and I don't think we're going to see any kind of return. And I think it would be far more better to look at staggering the hours of the people we have and covering the off time instead of the 9 to 5, and then people know at 6 o'clock you can dump. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public care to comment?
Massey, 349 Northeast 19th Avenue. I think a better idea would be to alert the residents, make an incentive for the residents to report what they see, similar to what we have with the recycle. If you do a certain amount of recycle, you get a certain amount of points or whatever. We could notify them through the water bill that this is the program we have going, and alert them that they should be diligent about what's going on in their neighborhood, because quite frankly, I see a lot of things, and some I report, some I don't. But of course, if people are made to be aware of it and that it's going to cost us $110,000, I don't care where you say it comes from. It's coming from my tax money. I don't care what department you have it in, but I paid my taxes for that money. So unless we're going to save $110,000 a year in that bulk pickup, which I don't think that's going to happen, then that money is down the drain. But I think we should start with the residents, make them aware of what the situation is, get an incentive program going, and see how it works out. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Michael Hudak, 34 Southeast 9th Avenue. One of the things that, in listening to all of this, that concerns me is this isn't just a nuance. This is taxing our storm drainage system, and that's a big topic that we had last week. All of these illegal dumping, that's what clogs up our storm drainage, and I think it's important that we make sure we address this issue. However we do it, I think it's important that that is also taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Joe Hines, 559 Northwest 47th Terrace. I got part of this is has the proposal letter from Calvin Giardina in there, and it says the code enforcement officer will become FACE Level 1 certified. FACE is Florida Association of Code Enforcement, and to become a Level 1 certified, you got to go to a 40-hour class and pass an exam. That's it. I'm sure that person, if the city hires that person will be a relative of somebody. And he'll probably be making $50,000 a year, and we'll be paying Mr. Giardino $110,000 for that service. This is an entry-level person, because it says will become FACE certified. I mean, it tells you right there. And he also tells you that he's going to work 2,080 hours a year, which is a 40-hour week. Doesn't say anything about overtime. First thing I'd say, well, I was wanting him to work 3,120 hours. I'd want him to work 60 hours a week if I was going to pay him $110,000. That'd still be a good deal for Giardino. It'd be a good deal for the city, because you could work 10 hours on Saturday, 10 hours on Sunday, and get the other hours in between there somehow, and the guy can make a little bit of extra money because he'd be getting overtime. But this deal here doesn't allow for any overtime, because it says 2,080 hours. So if you want him off hours, it's going to cost extra. So this is kind of a trap. I'd watch this proposal. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Anyone else from the public here to speak? Not seeing one, I'm going to close the public to be heard. So we had Commissioner Parnas and then Commissioner Drosky, and then City Manager.
Well, before we add an additional person to the staff, I'd like to know why it takes an inordinate amount of time when someone's given a citation before it's resolved. I'll give an example. The Hillsborough Pines Golf Course still has fallen trees, because I get calls every day from the hurricane. I've been told they've been cited. When do they get in front of a magistrate to get something serious done? I also made a request that the barbed wire that's illegal, that runs from Gouldsby down to the end of their property, is still up, and that's illegal, and it's still up as of today. I need code to explain to me why whatever process they're using isn't getting it done before I'll agree to add additional personnel. So if somebody would like to address it, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor?
City Manager.
Yes, so I'll quickly hand this over to Andy, but like any other criminal investigation, which a code compliance case is considered, there is a due process, and it is something that is not up to Eric Power or Bernard Pita to make that determination. It must go before a special magistrate. So with that, Andy, I'll let you go into a little more of the legal aspects of it.
There is Chapter 162, the code enforcement process requires that you first provide a notice and an opportunity to cure. If they haven't cured within the time frame set forth therein, then you set a hearing. And the code special, the special masters are only here, are they here twice a month? So you would have to, depending upon what date it falls, it could be as much as 3 weeks later. So justice is not as always as quickly as we would like it to be, Commissioner, you are correct. And there also could be times that then the special master, before, even when he finds a violation, gives that individual additional time to cure. This is all statutory. This is the requirement of the code enforcement process. So due process is not always a very, very quick process, and sometimes it frustrates our code people as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Drosky.
Well, when I asked you, Mayor, last night to bring the cons, you certainly did tonight. So, and I appreciate that, and I wanted to hear that, and Vice Mayor as well. And actually, the residents made some good points too. Mr. Sullivan mentioning about staggering the hours, Ms. Massey about the metrics to saving money, and then Mr. Hudak, which I really didn't think about, is also the illegal dumping adding to the stormwater problem in the city. So those are all things to consider. The bottom line is this is a big issue and problem in District 4. Lock Road, Powerline Road are two of the major sources of illegal dumping in our city. I get the calls and I see it. There's also the contractors for there's other areas and streets in District 4 where the contractors cut, like Association, that have the long ficus hedges, they cut it and they leave it there. And I know they leave it there because the HOAs call me and say, and the neighbors call me and the HOAs, why isn't this being picked up? Well, it's not being picked up because it is left there illegally by one of the contractors. It is a huge problem in our city, and maybe most people may or may not realize it, but it truly is. I'm on the fence because I would have liked to seen more metrics, how this is going to be implemented. What kind of goals or targets are we looking for? It's 110,000. I understand coming out of the solid waste fund, but will we save that money? Or we anticipated to save money through this program, and we just don't have those answers tonight. I'm inclined to give it a shot. The contract says that we can cancel on 30 days notice if it does go through. I would like to see monthly metrics, from staff, how we're doing. I understand that Rome wasn't built in a day, and we're not going to see a big push, in the first couple months. That's not the way it works, and nothing works that way. But if we do this, I do want to make sure that this, we're getting, the bang for our buck, so to speak, on this program. And if we're not, then we can pull the plug at any time. But because it's such a big problem in District 4, I'm hesitantly willing to give it a shot. But there's got to be some accountability how this program works.
Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, I came in, even as of last night, not wanting to do this, but I think I'm switched over to Todd's position that we're almost halfway through this fiscal year. Giving it a shot, give us 6 months worth of feedback, and then pull a plug in 6 months if it doesn't show that it's doing something. I know it's going to take more than a month or two to make some changes, but I can imagine if I live next to one of these lots that chronically get dumped on, I'd think, why isn't the city dealing with this? We have rules, but why do we have the rules if nobody's enforcing the rules? I think the staggering of the time of employees is a good idea, but I'm inclined to think, since we have, a 30-day clause where we could get out in 30 days with a letter?
Yes.
Is that the deal?
Yes.
I think the need is probably great. I don't think all our questions are answered, but we'd have better information and a better matrix in 6 months. And since it's already budgeted, it's not another tax on anybody. It's like saying it's a need. It's shown that it's worked according to the representative in Pompano, and it very well is true that people from Pompano are pushing coming up this way and Boca are coming down this way. So I don't think that's a real stretch of the imagination to think that could not be happening. So I'm willing to give it a shot, knowing that we can pull a plug if we don't have some real feedback on how the effectiveness is. So that's where I'm going to be heading when it comes time to vote.
Thank you. City Manager?
Yes, if I could just quickly have either Mr. Power or Mr. Pita come and talk about just our normal day operations of code compliance, how many complaints and cases we're going through on a daily basis. Just forget the solid waste aspect of it, and the reason why we currently cannot stagger our current 6 code compliance inspectors, please.
Okay, Bernard Pita, City of Deerfield Code Compliance. Thank you. So we have a staff of 6 code inspectors that patrol the areas every single day, and what they do is they look for various numbers of code violations throughout their assigned areas. Everybody that's in their assigned area usually is assigned there, so that way they're there permanently. They're gaining rapport with the residents in that area. They're knowing certain things because they do investigations. They have networks that they have in the neighborhoods, and basically what we do is we address any code violations that we observe, and also ones that come through complaints. So we get code complaints on several levels. We get the ones online. We get the ones through the Fix-It, which is through the city's website. We get phone calls, and also we get calls to the individual inspectors and to the office. So we handle those, and we have a lot of them. Some areas more than others are more involved in the community, and they reach out to code enforcement on a regular basis in order to let us know what's going on in the area. One of the things that we do is we go out, once we receive a call, and we go and look at the area and start code cases. So last year, we worked, including inspections and re-inspections, 14,900 cases. On a regular basis and on a monthly basis, the average caseload that we have a month is approximately 1,300 cases. I think last month we had 1,331 cases that we inspected and investigated. Presently, we have 2 special magistrates, and each special magistrate, we have approximately between 120 to 200 cases per special magistrate, which are people that are refusing to comply, and they have to come in front of the process of the special magistrate. With the illegal dumping part of it, which is one of the things that we do, what we started doing is involving Broward Sheriff's Office. We have the resident or the victim of the illegal dumping, being that I believe it's a misdemeanor, we have them call BSO, and they've been doing a Signal 14 information report, so that way it can help BSO, track the illegal dumping that's happening as well.
Not to cut you off, because
Okay.
I don't want to extend this any longer, but
Yes.
does that, I think, address why staggering with only 6 employees doesn't necessarily work? While it's a good idea in theory, with this amount of caseload work and the number of inspectors, it just doesn't work, so.
Yes, and I wanted to add also, I do stay till 8 o'clock at night, and I do patrol the city after hours for a lot of reasons. We have commercial vehicles everywhere, we have the illegal dumping, we also have light issues at night, and now between March and October, we have the turtle patrol, the turtle season, and I walk the beach as well, and I have another inspector that helps out with that. And on Sundays, we do respond to calls. We've responded on numerous times. I have 3 people I can call right now that'll come out at midnight if I call them, and because they feel that we're in partnership with Deerfield and they're dedicated. And I have responded here on Sunday as well for illegal dumping and other issues that are happening here in the city as well, so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, you're
That's all.
Essentially, this should be looked at as almost like a special detail we would have with BSO. If you have a problem, that's what we're looking at. And I will say this, Mr. Pita has been outstanding with that. I know when I've ever called the city manager with a code enforcement issue at some really odd hours, he's always been there. So thank you for that. Any other commission comments? Some direction?
I'm ready to make a motion to approve this.
Second.
Yeah, before we vote on this, is it possible to make sure that we have these metrics, and if this moves forward, that we have these metrics by the next commission meeting, so we can understand exactly what it's gonna be measured against? Can that be part of that motion?
2 weeks might be quick. I'm looking at, can you have it in a month?
Yeah, we will have it because we've had it at the budget workshops. I just could not get to it this evening. But we will have it at the next commission meeting if approved. Yep.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky?
Yes?
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Parnez?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Battle?
No.
Mayor Gantz?
No.
Item 8, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Deerfield Beach approving the award of request for proposals 2017-1818 for liability brokerage services to Garing Group, authorizing execution of a contract with Garing Group for a 2-year initial term with 3 one-year renewal options.
Any comments from the commission? Not seeing anyone from the public care to comment on this item? Not seeing anyone to come forward, I'm going to close it to the public. Commission, we need a motion or comments?
I make the motion that we approve this item, resolution number 2, what is it, 2018?
Dash 138.
Item number 8,
Yeah.
okay.
We have a motion.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky?
Yes?
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Parnez?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Battle?
Yes.
Mayor Gantz?
Yes.
Next is first reading of ordinance of abandoning a 12-foot wide sanitary sewer easement at 1250 West Hillsborough Boulevard.
City manager, can you give us a quick explanation of that?
Yes. Mr. Power?
Me again, Eric Power. So the property we're looking at is our TOD property. We're effectively calling Deerfield Station. That's not a word too. This, as you know, on this particular property was previously a hotel and a restaurant. The location and the orientation of those buildings allowed for a sanitary sewer system that came in a direction that is actually the opposite of the location in which the sanitary sewer system should be with the new residential property. So as this is an easement that was granted by the city to have the sanitary sewer, we actually have to release the easement in order for us to build on the not for us, I'm sorry, for the applicant to physically build on the property. So this is simply a release of a existing easement that is no longer in service.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone from the public care to comment on this item? Not seeing anybody coming forward, we can close it to the public.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, and a second. We have roll call, please.
Commissioner Drosky?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Parnas? Vice Mayor Battle?
Yes.
Mayor Gantz?
Yes. Comments by city administration, city attorney?
No comment.
Yes, I have no comments or follow-up. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Miller?
I've got a comment. I'm really not happy with the state of the landscaping around the post office. Oh, I thought we we're talking, I thought we were at the end. I'll come back to the post office when it's my time to comment.
I set you up on that, Commissioner. My
Yeah, I thought you
apologies.
skipped, but then I thought you said comments.
It was a setup, sorry about that. Item number 10, consideration to approve voting delegates to 2018-2019 Board of Directors of the Broward League of Cities. Commissioner Drosky?
I'd like to get into the mix this year. I don't want to be the voting delegate, but I would like to get more involved with the League of Cities, so,
Second alternate it is. I'm glad to rescind some of these duties.
Make a motion, Todd Drosky becomes second alternate.
I'll second that.
and then keep, the vice mayor as the voting delegate, and Mr. Parnas is the first alternate?
Does that work?
That works.
Anyone from the public care to comment on this item? Didn't think so. I'm going to close it to the public. Okay, so I guess
Todd's it.
all in favor for having Commissioner Drosky become the second alternate?
Aye.
I'm sorry, aye? I'm sorry, City Clerk, you have to speak up.
We can just do it all at once. We have to notate every one.
Okay, so all at once, we have our voting delegate would, I'll let somebody else make the motion and say it. I'm the mayor, I'm not supposed to be doing that.
So the motion is that Gloria's first and
I'm second.
second, and Todd will be third, and
Okay.
as our representatives.
We have a
to League of
motion, do we have a
Cities.
second for that?
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we have, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Approves unanimously. Okay, Commissioner Miller, now you're up. No setup anymore.
All the time I've been a commissioner, the landscaping at the post office has looked horrendous. And now that we are trying to do this Pioneer Grove, and it's right in kind of the focal point of the area, can't we get code enforcement to do something with this?
It's,
I'm saying it publicly.
no, it's funny you say that, because I complained about this several months ago, and the biggest problem is, they've kind of told us, tough.
Yeah,
Looks like they have no irrigation.
They
It's
are
terrible.
exempt from any type of code action. I've met with the local postmaster. I've had staff meet with the local postmaster, including code compliance, about the issues, and it's the same answer, that their hands are tied because of federal union contracts, because I even offered to have the
That's
city
what I was gonna
crews
suggest. Do we do it?
go on there, and they will not allow it. In fact, our city crews would probably get arrested for trespassing and not violating their property, but I can't think of the word, but yeah.
Right.
So
My
yeah.
suggestion on that is we kick it up the flagpole, and we start going to our state and federal elected officials.
Yeah, that seems,
Put some pressure on them.
that's a black eye in an area we're trying to develop.
We'll let them ignore us instead of the,
If I could suggest, the best option would be for them to vacate that property and actually sell it and move somewhere here in City Hall or to another location in Pioneer Grove, because that's a key property
It
in
is.
the local activity center, and that's something else we spoke to them about. So yes, I strongly encourage you. Sending letters to the postal master in Washington won't matter. I would suggest phone calls to Congressman Hastings, Congressman Deutsch. I'd even reach out to
Can we have you all
Congress-
draft a letter and we'll all sign it? I mean, or something like that?
What
or
I'm saying
individuals?
is the letters just get filed somewhere. We need to be, and I know we've brought it up in the past with congressional delegation meetings, but I think personal phone calls, not emails or letters, are what's going to make the difference at this point.
Yeah, we just spent millions fixing the road, and FDOT did, and we still got this blighted-looking building.
I agree.
All right.
Vice Mayor Battle.
Yes, sir. Just want to remind everybody, the listening, the looking public out there, that there is a District 2 meeting on April 26th at 7 o'clock at the Hillsborough Center. Please come out and try to be on time. We have a lot to discuss. In addition to that, Mr. City Manager, where's Mr. Gressy? We seem to be having a problem on our cul-de-sacs with on garbage pickup day. This morning I was over in that particular area off 14th and I believe 14th and 2nd. The new people who moved into the house that's in the middle of the cul-de-sac have so many cars that they park them outside on the street. So that caused the garbage truck to have to go down on one side. Then he couldn't go around like he usually does. So he had to go out and come and back in order to pick up the trash on the other side of the cul-de-sac. So if there's anything we could do, maybe send those people a letter or do something so that they won't park those cars or get rid of them one way or the other. We need to check on that.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
definitely bring that up with the solid waste division, because normally they'll go out and they'll put something on there, please don't park here on garbage day.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Parnas?
Yes. Couple of things. I've been informed that a number of cities have requested a court case in which home rule would be restored to the state, taking the governor and the legislature to court. And I'm wondering if there's any interest in joining that group so that we can have home rule again and decide things for the city without being told by Tallahassee, you can't do that. We can't even restrict sensible gun control or ban an AR-15 or machine gun or a tank, because we would be fined and removed from office. I think home rule has to be restored to the cities. And I would hope that we would consider joining the several other cities that have gone to court on this. That's all I have.
Thank you. Commissioner Drosky?
I want to first thank everyone that came to Bourbon, Boots and Bourbon this last weekend. I know all my colleagues were there, pardon me, staggered throughout the day. It was a long day.
They
but
were staggering?
I'll never go staggering.
I missed a good party.
Well, maybe. But Drake White, if you haven't seen him, watch it on YouTube or buy his CD. I mean, he is actually a very great performer. I hadn't heard of him before this festival, but he is a great performer. Has a great voice. So it was a good time by everyone that was there. Pardon me. I just want to remind, apologies, to remind everyone that the apiary grand opening for this Saturday has actually been moved to June 2nd. So please don't come out to the apiary grand opening. You will be alone. The third issue I have is the Villages of Hillsborough Park. They have installed a gate at the entrance to the park, but they can't close. It's a sun up to sundown park, but they can't close the gate at sundown because I guess there's something on the books with respect to boats being able to use the Hillsborough Canal. So I spoke to the city manager briefly before the meeting today, but whatever we need to do to fix that, if we could, have something, a proposed ordinance, whatever staff feels like is appropriate. I know maybe you don't want it exactly at sundown for the boats, but maybe shortly thereafter for the water. But to me, it just seems like a burden on staff to have to come back at midnight to close that gate. And then in the meantime, you've got 3 or 4 hours for the kids and others to cause mischief in that park, which defeats the whole purpose of having the gate. So whatever it takes to fix that, if we could have an ordinance, for first reading on our next agenda, I would appreciate that if we could fix that. I'm sure the mayor is going to bring up cuisine of the region, so I will pass over that on my list.
I wasn't. I'll let you.
What, this Wednesday? Is it this Wednesday? Yes, April's. Next Wednesday. I'm sorry, not tomorrow, but the following Wednesday, the 25th. will be the Cuisine of the Region, one of the signature events for the Northeast Focal Point or Center for Active Aging here in the city of Deerfield Beach. If you haven't got your tickets and they're still available, I encourage you to go. It's great food from many different local restaurants that we have here in Deerfield Beach. And last but not least, if you want to complain, I learned tonight that if you want to complain about your taxes going up, complain to the school board and their half mil that they're proposing. That's all I got.
Thank you. Tomorrow night is our Coastal Waterways Workshop at the Hillsborough Technical Center. That's at 7 o'clock. It's very important. One of the things we're going to be talking about is the windblown sand issue that we have on the beach. There's a lot of different opinions on that, whether we use any type of methodology to try to reduce the windblown sand or we leave it as it is. We've had this workshop before. This is a follow-up with, I believe, input from the Marine Advisory Board, some of their recommendations and staff's recommendations. Not really recommendations, more presentations of pros and cons for us to make a decision on. So I do encourage everybody to come out there and please get the word out on that. The other part of that will be part of the coming up with the development for a comprehensive beach management plan. So if you can attend, please do. We do have an opening on our community roundtable position for the MPO. I believe Mr. Lou Vinsel is going to be coming forward. Mr. Bogner, who passed away, who passed away, even gave his blessings to Mr. Vinsel to replace him before he passed. So I would be more than happy to nominate him. So, City Manager?
Yeah, just quickly on that, I believe because Vice Mayor Battle is the representative, we did check with Mr. Stewart, and Vice Mayor Battle has to make that nomination going forward. So
I make a nomination that we have ask Mr. Lou Vinsel to assume the position of community, the community person on the MPO.
Perfect. That'd be great if we could have that brought forward and speak with them, and it's something we've been talking about for a little while. One thing I want to point out, it's great, knowledge is great, and I've done it myself, and I've embarrassed myself. I've sat up here and pulled those documents that we get every month, and I look at the laundry list back when Mr. Mahaney was here. So you can pull up a little snapshot in time for a certain month. We realize it's a fiscal year. Things don't run year to year, it's a fiscal year. So when you see your month to month, you realize that the numbers are representative of that snapshot in time. I sat up here in my first few months as an elected official with a different city manager, yelling and screaming the same way, embarrassing myself, talking about stuff that I really quite wasn't informed of. What I realized later is a lot of these numbers fill out more towards the end of the fiscal year. And it's not a matter of, oh gosh, we had this left over, let's go spend it, it's all accounted for. What you will see is you will see certain accounts, those collections or some of the things that come in aren't done until later in the fiscal year. These numbers are deceiving when you look at them in a snapshot in time, and that's part of the problem. We don't get audited on a regular basis and have everyone else in the world looking at our numbers if we're hiding money and squirreling it away as if we're doing something illegal. And I resent people who try to imply that because they have looked at one little bit of information and think they know what they're talking about. I caution people to choose their words when it comes to that sort of thing and look at understand what they're talking about a little bit better. I've made the same mistake. I've been here and I've done that. So we do get the financials. The financials can be reviewed and they can be misleading. You have to really know the full picture and not just look at one page and think you know the entire story. So with that, looking for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We have a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.